Hey, good morning. I'm going to try and do sort of an impromptu. People have been asking, and I'm just now learning how to manipulate some of the HTML gauges and stuff. So I'm going to try and show. I did a video, and I'm using this little model that'll be linked, and I've already created a couple of HTML screens, and basically, watch the other video to get to this point, and this will be a continuation of it. I've exported, so I don't have to do any model work. Okay, everything we'll be doing will be in the package here, and I've already got this one set up, and I'll show you just with the bare minimum for the era. There, and of course here's the minimum, and here, and as you can see, I just have both two separate era screens. You can actually go like just comma and put this one right here in one screen, and you would have, and both of them would display the era. But in this situation, if you do it like this, the problem is they will be controlled by one unit. Will control both units. So this is okay if you have, just want two screens that are identical. If you do it this way, where you have two separate comments for each screen, then you have independent units that can be on a different screen. And that's useful. If you have two screens, you can use one on say the synth viz with your attitude gauge and everything, the other one be your map. So anyway, this is all set up just like we did in the first video, only with two screens. Now the question is, how do we get an actual HTML gauge? I should have had an example of that, such as like this, that's custom. And here's what I ended up making, and I used a default gauge to get the files and the actual code, because I'm no coder, right? So how do we import a default gauge? Well, first you gotta find them, and if you go, oh, that's not it. And if you go in your default folder, there's two directories. This Asobo Beast Cockpits generic, and the other one is nav systems. I created some shortcuts here for these two folders because it's just a lot easier, and that's where you would borrow the gauge from. So like for this one, I borrowed an engine monitor, and then I edited it. Okay, well, how do we get that? Let's see, is it this one? Yeah. So here is the one I borrowed. This is the actual gauge that I used to create this, but that's not what it looks like. So how do you get this in our temporary aircraft? That's the question. So we go into our sources. No, I take that back. We go into our sources, not our aircraft. Right here. This is what goes into your add-on. So anything, we'll have to add a asset group to pull this, but we're gonna I guess at this point I should do the hello world example. That's because this is how you get this directory. But let's see, I don't have that pulled up at all. Yeah, I do. Okay, I'll have a save on it there. So in hello world, which is the documentation on creating an HTML, and they're just telling you how to convert one of the DA62s, okay, which is great. They tell you how to do it, but what if you're not using the DA62, you're developing it from scratch, then how do you do it? Well, if you go all the way down here to the files, because that's all I'm really interested in. They tell you to put it in a specific folder. Here it is. HTML, UI, Pages, vCockpit, Instruments, Hello World. That's your output directory. Now here they got it in some oddball. I like to duplicate my output in my input. and that's what these are. This is your input directory and your output directory. And I like to duplicate them. So I'm going to put it in exactly this directory in my input as well. And that's HTML. Pages. And one more. And the reason you want it in this specific directory, on the output, obviously, I mean, like I say, instruments, it is because this is like a default directory that they always look for, and they tell you that down here. In the panel, okay. Let's see what this one has nav systems. Here it is. And then here, they just use that very last directory. And you'll notice you don't need to use the full path. This instrument is part of an implicit sim path. So by putting it in this specific folder here, and our output obviously, but I've already got it duplicated, we don't have to use the full path in the panel config, which is what this is talking about here. This is our panel config. Well, let's create our panel config. Well, I'm not in the right directory. So this is where our instrument will go. Okay, in this case, in the Hello World, we'll make it Hello World Display. That's the name of our folder. And because that's Hello World Display, our panel will have Hello World Display and then the HTML. Okay, so let's make a panel for this. Actually, I need to do that right here. I'll just open another folder. So in my panel config, we will we're going to use one that we already have. So I'm going to change that. Because again, remember they're using the sample DA to 2. And this will just go to my second screen. And now we need to get the rest of the files. And that'll be in this folder. We need to create the Hello World samples. Sample files. So here's your HTML. And this is literally copy and paste. We won't change anything, save, and then we got to rename it. I should have renamed it first. I guess if you haven't figured out, this is not for a beginner. Okay, and now we have an HTML with this as the content. So that's our HTML, and we need the JavaScript. Make sure you get that last little semicolon. And then we will create a new file. I should be doing this not this way. I should be naming them first. The reason is text may treat text differently than say a JavaScript file. I don't know. Okay, now we got the JavaScript file, the HTML, and we need the CSS, which is the style sheet, it's also called. Let's go ahead and do it correctly this time. This is the way you should do it. You should rename your blank file. Okay, now we got that file. Then we can edit that file with this content. That's the correct way to do it. Oh, and be sure to get that closing bracket. Copy that. And paste it in there. All right. Save, yes. Alright, now we have all three of our hello world display stuff, and we have it in this specific HTML pages vCockpit instruments folder. Anything we put in here we can use via the panel config, and our line will just need whatever folder name this is and whatever folder name the HTML is. So let's say we want to use, well, I guess we should try this and make sure it works. As far, this should be a 2. This has to be in sequential order. Almost goofed up there. Make sure everything else is correct. I don't have an emissive in this one. That's something else. You'll have to look at the other one to understand why I use the emissive. Not necessary. If you're using, I guess. Okay, here. So now I'm doing it here, not in the output, the community folder. So I gotta add an asset to my package. Now you can do this in dev mode, but I don't want to have to go into the game or anything. So I'm just going to add an HTML copy asset. And from there to there, that's what I added. So this will be test. Just anything, just so it's unique for this project. This is an internal name. Asset directory, package, sources. And I know what it is because I duplicate everything. And output. And this is a type. I'm not going to show where all this is documented. It's kind of everywhere. And that should do it. We'll see if when I run it, if we get that in the output. So clean up. I just have some scripts. These are real simple. It just deletes that output for me. I mean, you can create them yourself. They're dependent, specifically dependent on your computer directories, so it's not something I would distribute. Alright, and we got to build, right? Yeah, let's see if it builds and throws that. The only thing we're really doing is adding some copy, a copy asset, see if it copies right. I could just as easily throw that in the output, throw that in the community folder. Alright, and so did it create? Yeah, there's the correct folder, and I'm packages. Perfect. So it put it where it's supposed to. So that's the correct code. I was just double checking my own code, to be honest. And then we'll copy this into the community and give it a second try. And that should give us the hello world script. Now that's, like I say, I do things a little different than the explanation on the web page. They tell you how to do it through the SDK, and I'm just not very good with the SDK. So hopefully that'll work, and then I'll show you here. Basically, we can just copy over the files from. I'll show you how to swap that directory structure and the use of those 3 files into how to copy any gauge from the game into your own aircraft package. Okay, so it's not the game's package. You can now edit it and customize it and use it in your aircraft without affecting all the other aircraft. Right? So it's not the base game files anymore. You're loading it directly from within your own add-on, and that's kind of the start. And I don't know how to I don't know how to do the actual coding or write new gauges. So this is how I ended up making that engine monitor. A little bit custom. It's not a real great, I mean, from a coding or back end standpoint, that's really a child's play kind of job. But it's a good way to get started and be, if you just want to move say the G1000, if you're going to use it default, but maybe you want a different button layout or whatever, you can do it like this. I guess I should be test aircraft. Sorry, I'm getting lost. There we are. I hate that. Every time I go for a flight, I have to take a flight from my local airport. It's the little piddly things that get under your skin. I really feel like they should have a home base kind of save, someplace that you always load in, unless you tell it otherwise. And there it is. There's our hello world. And this is still our, which is tied to a start. It's still our era. But if you remember, I said because I'm not doing it the same stuff, I don't have any click spots because I didn't add that $sign prefix. But there's your hello world display. So let me close that. Let me mute that. Okay. Now, so we're back to here. I want to show you how to. Okay, so meanwhile, back at the ranch, if you remember, we started out at these directories in our official folder, and I was showing you this is kind of where you're going to find all of those. If you want a digital clock, or maybe you want a digital hour meter, you could just use theirs. And of course you can model the actual model, or you could even import it from a default generic airplane, but model it's a better way. But the one I ended up using for that is this one here. Okay, so basically I wanted to put that gauge, just copy it right here, and that's it. Now we need to point our panel config at that gauge, and here's our actual gauge. This is what you would edit if you wanted to recode it. Here's where you'd do it. If you wanted to change the look of the gauge, you would do most of it. You would do in here. This is the one I did most of my editing in, was just rearrange it. So how do you get that to show up in the package? Now there's a couple of things. You also have to find the hello world does not have wrong folder. And you also have to find, for some gauges you might know, like you have for the era, you have this include file. Well, there's an include file for the Vigilus as well. And how do you know what it is? Well, they have a whole page for it in the documentation. Yeah, here it is. Cool. So they have a whole page, and if you read through the templates, I'm sure it'll tell you the, well, does it have that? I'm not sure this tells you. Okay, what I did is I located an aircraft that had that data in it, and the one I found was the, which one was it? It was an RV7. Yeah, it was the RV7, I think, from Flights MTO, just a freeware, and it happened to have the comments, so I'm going to borrow it from my other aircraft here. But like if you're using the G1000, then do that. Get the G1000 data from the G1000, from any aircraft that has it, right? So here it is. Nope, wrong files. Here it is. Okay. So here's the comment for the Vigilus that I need. Okay. Well, I'll need to add that. Most of your big GPSs and everything will definitely have, a lot of the others, even the little radios, the clocks, etc., will have a behavior file that you have to include in your model. This is kind of gone over with the other one, so do the era first, and you'll understand where this is going. Then we have the panel file itself and the XML. Okay, yeah. And here's what I did on the, I just used the general panel because it's an engine gauge instead of the avionics switch like for a radio or the era. And I did that just so it'd come on with the main power. This is your engine gauge, so it should be on when you crank the engine. So this is the part we add here. And we just add that. Now we have the era that'll only come on after I crank it. And this one will come on with your ignition key or your battery key, your main power. Alright, so that's those two. Did I ever get this? No, I didn't. So we need, here's how I have it listed. So this is where we just need the name from the panel. Yeah, the name of the folder and the HTML. So it's the name of this folder, provided it's in that specific directory. It's the name of that folder. If you have, see here, we're pointing it at the main game folders. Here we're pointing it at our folder this time. Actually, let's change that just so we know. We'll leave those the same. Let's change this. So we'll go be simple, so you can see what's going. I'm just not using generic names here. I'm using specific names. So that's the engine gauge folder, and we're pointing it at that HTML. Okay, then we have the 3 files, right? This is my old one. Let's do a clean up, get rid of those extra folders. Double check here. We have the model behaviors file, yes. And there is actually another bit of code for buttons that you would have to put here. So I guess I should kind of at least show that. Yeah, in other words, all of them, if you're doing like a G1000, you're going to need the include plus the code for it here. Usually it's a pretty, I'm in the wrong directory here. Usually it's a pretty simple bit of code. Do I not? There we go. And this one is going to be way the heck down. Right where I started, at the top of mine. Dang it! Here it is. Yeah, and this is my name, and again, this is internally. You can name the component anything you want. So here's the code I need, that template. I just need to enable that template, and then it'll use the buttons, provided I use the correct names, which again you'd get from the say the C208 if you were doing the G1000 or whatever. You'd have to find an aircraft. So I'm not going to bother with that for today's purpose, because this isn't about coding, and we're not even going to put the buttons in it. But that is done. Panel. That's in. And that's in. Alright. That should get us an engine gauge. It's not going to work all perfectly, but alright, and we will build that one. This one. I can't do it while I'm running. Like that. Dang it. This one actually copies it down into here and whatnot. So, but I'm trying not to use those other than clean up. That's literally just deleting these other folders, the output folders. But see, now you could, the idea is to get this code separated. In other words, now we have this actual instrument code in here, in my package, rather than in the default game. And that's how you build your own gauges. It's the first step to putting a new gauge in the game. Now, of course, you would create those 3 files. Probably in an HTML or JavaScript app. I don't know. I play with the coding, and I learn enough to do it, do what I have to do, but I don't really know even HTML. I mean, my download page, I made it from basic scratch. That and this Blue Griffin, I think it's called, little, freeware HTML editor. I use a combination of text and the Blue Griffin to kind of do what I need. I'm actually a general contractor, so have 0 background in tech or computers. I do love it, playing with it. I'm going to fill my coffee up for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, what'd I do? Didn't get my coffee yet. I cleaned up, and I forgot to put the new package in there, so we didn't have our aircraft. Alright, now I'll be right back. Oh, I did notice a kind of a fun fact when I made the other video. I think I was, said, oh, I rescale it or set the scale, Alt A and set scale, and I said I did that like an afterthought, like I'm not sure you need to, but I found out when I went to make those two that that's actually a requirement. There we go. That's what I should have had there. I guess it doesn't matter where I load in so long as I can find a parking spot. There we go. No, I don't have actual switches or anything, but what I put in that one config is a little different than the other. Here you see that this is like avionics and this is general panel, and the difference is that one of them, hello world, starts whenever that one of them would start, and there's our gauge loading up. Stop. And it's not sized right or whatever, but there it is. There's your engine gauge. Now I rechanged it, and the idea is now that you have it in game or in your aircraft, you can easily go in here and edit these three files. These are the three. This is the code that does the heavy lifting. This is your style sheet, and this is the display itself. And you can do a lot. I don't know much of how to do that, but anyway, that was kind of the extent of this video. Oh, excuse me. So, I wanted to show you how to link together and get these in a package. Now, actually, the HTML stuff you can actually do right here. In other words, I could have done every bit of that without using the SDK or even building the package, provided those meshes are already in the model, which they were in this case. But then you just you put your files here, you fix your layout, and you keep going. But oh, excuse me, just a second. But I wanted to show the full process of how to go from an actual SDK package all the way through. I'll link the same test project and everything in the description. I hope this helps some people. I know I went through it kind of quick. This was just out of the blue. This isn't the greatest, stuff for me. I'm not very knowledgeable on the coding side, so this is a stretch for me. I know how to get them in game and work with them a little bit, and that's the part I'm trying to help people with. So good luck out there, and thanks for coming to watch. Have a good day.